Imagine you're 17 years old. It's April 2009. Spring break. All your friends are going to Myrtle Beach. The parties, the beach, the freedom. And you want to go so badly. But your mom says no. So what do? You lie. You tell her you're spending the night at a friend's house nearby. And instead, you and your girlfriends get in a car and drive 800 miles south to South Carolina. Your boyfriend back home knows where you really are. He's texting you constantly, checking in, making sure you're okay. On April 25th, around 9 p.m., you're walking back to your hotel after visiting a friend. You text your boyfriend, "I'm heading back now." And then nothing. Your texts stop. Your phone goes straight to voicemail. Your boyfriend starts calling everyone, panicking. He calls your mom. Your mom finds out you're not at your friend's house. You're 800 miles away in Myrtle Beach. And you vanished. This is what happened to Brittany Drexel, a 17-year-old girl from Rochester, New York, who defied her mother, snuck away for spring break, and disappeared on a South Carolina street. For 13 years, her family searched. For 13 years, investigators pursued dozens of leads. For 13 years, rumors swirled about what happened to her. Human trafficking, gang violence, bodies fed to alligators. And then, in May 2022, a sex offender finally confessed. Raymond Moody told police he kidnapped Brittany, took her to a remote campsite, raped her, strangled her, and buried her body in a shallow grave. He kept that secret for 13 years. His girlfriend helped him cover it up for 13 years. And Brittany's mother moved to South Carolina and spent 13 years searching for a daughter she knew, deep down, was already gone. Before we get into this story, and trust me, this one is intense, drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. Are you from New York? Rochester? Did you know about Brittany's case? Have you ever been to Myrtle Beach for spring break? Drop that comment. Let me know you're here. Because this story is about what happens when one bad decision meets pure evil. And it's a story every parent and every teenager needs to hear. My name is Host Name. This is Untold Cold Cases Files. And today, we're telling you the complete story of Brittany Drexel, from the secret spring break trip that her mother had a premonition would end badly, to the 13-year search that finally ended with justice. Let's get into it. Brittany Marie Drexel was born on October 7th, 1991, in Rochester, New York. Her birth parents, John, Kayaglu, and Dawn, were teenagers when they had her. They weren't married. John was of Turkish descent. Dawn was young and trying to figure out her life. Shortly after Brittany was born, Dawn married a man named Chad Drexel. Chad was in the military, and he did something beautiful. He adopted Brittany and gave her his last name. She became Brittany Drexel. Growing up, Brittany moved around a bit as military families do. But eventually, the family settled in Chile, New York, a suburb of Rochester. It was a good place to raise kids. Safe, middle class, the kind of community where everybody knows everybody. But Brittany wasn't like every other kid. She had something that made her distinctive, something unique. Her right eye. Brittany was born with a condition called persistent hyperplastic primary vitreous in her right eye. It's a rare congenital disorder. She had to undergo several surgeries as a child. And despite the surgeries, her right eye remained blind. The condition also caused her eye to wander sometimes, to move in ways she couldn't control. So Brittany wore special contact lenses to help stabilize her eye and give it a more uniform appearance. These weren't just cosmetic. These contact lenses gave Brittany confidence. They made her feel normal, and they became part of her signature look. They gave her eyes a distinctive appearance that people remembered. This detail becomes important later, because when investigators finally found Brittany's remains 13 years after she disappeared, one of the items recovered with her body was a contact lens. Even after all those years, even after decomposition, That contact lens was still there, a heartbreaking reminder of the girl who just wanted to look and feel like everyone else. High school junior with big dreams. By April 2009, Brittany was 17 years old and a junior at her Rochester area high school. She was popular, outgoing, always had a smile on her face. Her family described her as an awesome kid, very happy, carefree. Her younger sister Marissa looked up to her. Her stepdad Chad was proud of her. Her mom Dawn adored her. Brittany had dreams. She wanted to leave Rochester one day and pursue a career in fashion design. She loved clothes, loved style, loved the idea of creating things that would make people feel beautiful. But she was still just a 17-year-old girl living in upstate New York, going to high school, hanging out with friends, figuring out who she was and who she wanted to be. In 2009, Brittany was dating a classmate named John Greco. They were in a committed relationship, the kind of high school romance that feels all-consuming when you're 17. John and Brittany texted constantly. They talked on the phone every night. They had that kind of closeness where if one of them didn't hear from the other for even a few hours, they'd worry. This detail is crucial because when Brittany disappeared, John was the first person to sound the alarm. He knew immediately that something was wrong. He knew Brittany wouldn't just stop responding to texts. He knew her habits, her patterns, her personality. And when her texts suddenly stopped on April 25th, 2009, John Greco started making phone calls that would ultimately expose what had happened. Spring break 2009. For teenagers all over America, it meant one thing: Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach was the destination. The parties, the beach, the freedom. Hotels full of teenagers with no supervision. It was every parent's nightmare and every teenager's dream. Brittany wanted to go. Some of her friends were planning a trip. They'd rent hotel rooms, drive down together, spend a week in the sun. So Brittany asked her mom, "Can I go to Myrtle Beach for spring break with some friends?" Dawn's answer was immediate. Absolutely not. Why? Several reasons. First, Dawn didn't know most of the kids going on this trip. These weren't Brittany's close friends. They were acquaintances, kids Dawn had never met. Second, there would be no adult supervision. No parents going along. Just a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds left to their own devices in a beach town known for partying. Third, and this is the one that still haunts Dawn to this day, she had a mother's intuition, a premonition, a feeling deep in her gut that if Brittany went on this trip, something bad would happen. Dawn told her daughter, "No, you're not going," and that's final. But teenagers don't always listen to their parents, especially when all their friends are doing something. Brittany was determined to go to Myrtle Beach, so she came up with a plan. On April 22nd, 2009, Brittany had an argument with her mom. It was about something minor, the kind of argument mothers and teenage daughters have all the time. But Brittany used it as cover. After the argument, Brittany asked if she could spend the night at a local friend's house. Dawn, wanting to smooth things over and give Brittany some space, said yes. But Brittany didn't go to a friend's house in Rochester. She met up with two girlfriends. They got in a car, and they started the 800-mile drive to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Brittany's sister Marissa would later say, "Me and my mom thought she was here in Rochester, but in reality, she wasn't." John Greco knew the truth. Brittany had told her boyfriend where she was really going. John had work commitments and couldn't go with her, but he knew she was headed to Myrtle Beach. He didn't tell Dawn. He probably thought it would be fine. They'd be back in a few days. What'd go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. And it did. Quick pause here. If you're already invested in Brittany's story, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and here's why it matters. YouTube's algorithm looks at early engagement. The more likes this video gets in the first few hours, the more people YouTube shows it to. And this story needs to be heard. By parents. By teenagers. by everyone. So hit that like. And let's continue with what happened when Brittany arrived in Myrtle Beach. On the morning of April 23rd, 2009, Brittany and her two friends arrived safely in Myrtle Beach. They'd driven through the night, 800 miles from Rochester, New York, to coastal South Carolina. They checked into the Bar Harbor Hotel on South Ocean Boulevard, one of the many hotels right on the beach that catered to spring breakers. The place was packed with teenagers, music, parties. The beach just steps away. For Brittany, this must have felt like freedom, like adventure, like everything she'd hoped spring break would be. Back in Rochester, her mom Dawn and her sister Marissa had no idea where she really was. Brittany and John Greco stayed in constant contact via text message. And from those texts, we know something important. The trip wasn't going well. On April 25th, just 2 days after arriving, Brittany texted John that spring break wasn't going as planned. What did that mean? We don't know all the details. But for what investigators pieced together, Brittany was feeling out of place. The girls she came with weren't really her close friends. She was feeling isolated, maybe a bit lonely, possibly regretting the whole thing. She was also worried about her mom finding out the truth. John, back in Rochester, kept checking in on her. "You okay? Having fun? Be safe." They texted back and forth throughout the day. On April 25th, Brittany told him she was trying to make the best of it. She'd walk the beach, hang out, maybe visit some other friends who were also in Myrtle Beach for spring break. And that's exactly what she did on the evening of April 25th, a decision that would cost her life. Let's walk through Brittany's last day, step by step, because somewhere in these hours is the moment when everything went wrong. 8 p.m. Brittany is at the Bar Harbor Hotel with the girl she came with. But she decides to leave. She wants to visit another friend, Peter Brazowitz, a 20-year-old nightclub promoter she knew from the Rochester area, who was also in Myrtle Beach. Peter was staying at the Blue Water Resort, about 1.5 miles south down Ocean Boulevard. Brittany tells the girls she's going to walk down to the Blue Water to see Peter. She'll be back later. She's wearing a black and white tank top, shorts, flip-flops. She's carrying a beige purse. She has her cell phone. She heads out. 8:45 p.m. Security cameras at the Blue Water Resort capture Brittany arriving. She goes inside. She hangs out with Peter and some other friends for a little while. Around 8:45 p.m., Brittany leaves the Blue Water Resort. Security cameras capture her walking back out, heading north on Ocean Boulevard, back toward her hotel. She texts John, "I'm heading back to my hotel now." John texts back. They go back and forth for a few minutes. 9:15 p.m., the texts suddenly stop. John tries to call Brittany. Straight to voicemail. He tries again. Voicemail. He texts. No response. He waits a few minutes, figuring maybe her phone died or she's in an area with bad reception. But minutes turn into an hour. John starts to panic. He calls the friends Brittany was staying with at the Bar Harbor Hotel. "Have you seen Brittany? Is she back yet?" "No, they haven't seen her." John's panic intensifies. This isn't like Brittany. She wouldn't just disappear without telling him. She wouldn't ignore his calls and texts. So John makes the call that changes everything. He calls Brittany's mother. When Dawn's phone rang and she saw John's name, she probably expected him to be calling to talk to Brittany. Maybe they'd had a fight. Maybe he wanted to talk things through. But what John said made Dawn's world collapse. "Is Brittany with you? I can't reach her." "What do you mean?" "She's at a friend's house locally," Dawn said. "No," John said. "She's in Myrtle Beach. She's been there since Thursday, and I can't get a hold of her. She was texting me, and then she just stopped responding hours ago." Dawn felt her stomach drop. Her daughter had lied to her. Her daughter was 800 miles away, and now her daughter wasn't answering her phone. That premonition Dawn had, that feeling that something bad would happen if Brittany went to Myrtle Beach, it was coming true. Dawn immediately called Chad. Then she called the Rochester police. My daughter is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. She lied to me about where she was, and now no one can reach her. I need you to contact police down there. The Rochester police made the call to Myrtle Beach Police Department. We have a possible missing person. 17-year-old girl from New York. Last known location, your city. And the search for Brittany Drexel began. On the morning of April 26th, the day after Brittany disappeared, Myrtle Beach police began their investigation. They went to the Bar Harbor Hotel and searched Brittany's room. Everything was there. All her clothes, all her belongings. The only things missing were her purse and her cell phone, the items she'd had with her when she left the hotel the night before. Police tracked down Peter Brozowitz at the Blue Water Resort. He was the last person known to have seen Brittany. Peter confirmed, yeah, Brittany came by around 8:30 or so. We hung out for a little bit. She left around 8:45. I haven't seen her since. Police pulled security camera footage from the Blue Water Resort. And there she was, Brittany arriving around 8:30 p.m., Brittany leaving around 8:45 p.m., walking north on Ocean Boulevard. And then, nothing. No other cameras capture her after that. She vanished somewhere on that 1.5-mile walk back to her hotel. One of the first things investigators did was track Brittany's cell phone. In 2009, this technology was getting better. Investigators could ping cell towers and see approximately where a phone was located based on which towers it connected to. The results were chilling. Brittany's phone, after she sent that last text to John around 9:15 p.m., started moving. And it wasn't moving north toward her hotel. It was moving south, away from Myrtle Beach, down Highway 17 toward Georgetown and Charleston. The phone traveled 50 to 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach before the signal stopped. Right near the Georgetown-Charleston County line, in an area near the South Santee River and the small town of McClellanville. The phone went dead around 1 a.m. on April 26th, just a few hours after Brittany disappeared. Investigators realized immediately this wasn't a runaway situation. Brittany didn't leave on her own. Someone took her. Someone drove her 60 miles from Myrtle Beach, and then either her phone died or whoever had her turn it off or destroyed it. This case wasn't a missing person case. This was an abduction. I need to pause for just a second. If you haven't subscribed to Untold Cold Cases Files yet, please do it now. Hit that subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. We cover cases like Brittany's, cases that need attention, cases that families need help with, cases where the truth matters. Your subscription tells YouTube this content is important. So subscribe, ring that bell, and let's keep going because what happens next, the searches, the rumors, the false leads, it's a 13-year nightmare. When Dawn learned that Brittany was missing in South Carolina, she didn't hesitate. She got her car and drove 13 hours straight from Rochester, New York to Myrtle Beach. All I knew was I had to find my daughter, Dawn said. When she arrived, the Myrtle Beach police initially weren't taking the case as seriously as Dawn thought they should. In their view, Brittany was a teenage runaway. She'd lied to her mom about where she was going. Maybe she'd just run off with some guy. Maybe she'd show up in a few days. But Dawn knew better. A mother knows. This wasn't Brittany running away. This was something worse. So Dawn did what she had to do. She went to the media. She held press conferences. She gave interviews to every TV station, every newspaper, every outlet that would listen. She held up Brittany's photo. She begged for information. And the strategy worked. The case went national. CNN picked it up. Nancy Grace covered it. America's Most Wanted featured Brittany. Investigation Discovery did an episode. Dr. Phil had Dawn and Peter Brozowitz on the show. Suddenly, everyone in America knew about Brittany Drexel, the pretty 17-year-old girl with the distinctive eyes who'd vanished from Myrtle Beach. And with that national attention came pressure on law enforcement to find her. Over the following weeks and months, massive searches were conducted. Near Myrtle Beach, teams searched the beach, the dunes, wooded areas, drainage ditches, anywhere a body might be hidden or where Brittany might have run to. Near McClellanville, because Brittany's phone had pinged in that area, search teams focused heavily on the Georgetown County region about 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach. Cadaver dogs, ground searches, boat searches of waterways. Throughout South Carolina, tips came in from all over. Every tip was followed. Every potential sighting investigated. Nothing. No trace of Brittany was ever found. The suspects and persons of interest. Over 13 years, numerous people became suspects or persons of interest in Brittany's disappearance. Peter Brozowitz, because he was the last known person to see Brittany alive, Peter immediately came under intense scrutiny. Peter was a 20-year-old nightclub promoter. He knew Brittany from Rochester. He admitted she'd visited him at the Blue Water Resort on the night she disappeared. Peter was questioned extensively. His timeline was checked. His alibis verified. Police searched his hotel room. And ultimately, Peter was cleared. His alibi checked out. There was no evidence connecting him to Brittany's disappearance. But the public attention destroyed him. He was named on TV shows, discussed on message boards, accused in the court of public opinion. On Dr. Phil, Dawn and Peter had confrontations, with Peter expressing frustration at how his reputation had been destroyed. It would take 13 years before Peter was completely vindicated. And when Raymond Moody finally confessed, Peter's attorney stated publicly that Peter was owed a big apology by law enforcement and the American people. Timothy Sean Taylor. In 2011, a man named Timothy Taylor was arrested for allegedly trying to kidnap a 20-year-old woman in Myrtle Beach. Police initially thought the case might be connected to Brittany's disappearance. But those charges were later dropped, and police stated the cases were not related. The rumor: human trafficking and gang violence. For years, disturbing rumors circulated about what had happened to Brittany. In 2016, the FBI announced they believed Brittany had been kidnapped by a group, held in a stash house, sexually assaulted by multiple people, murdered, and her body fed to alligators. This rumor was based on testimony from a prison informant, someone claiming to have knowledge of what happened. The rumor was terrifying. It spread nationwide, and it devastated Brittany's family, who were forced to imagine unthinkable horrors. But it turned out to be false. When Raymond Moody finally confessed in 2022, the true story was different, still horrific, but not the gang-related trafficking scenario the FBI had described. The man named in the rumor as being involved sued the U.S. Department of Justice for defamation, as he was falsely connected to the case. After driving to Myrtle Beach in April 2009 to search for her daughter, Dawn made a decision that would define the next 13 years of her life. She stayed. Dawn moved to South Carolina permanently. She couldn't go back to Rochester. She couldn't be 800 miles away from where her daughter had last been seen. So she relocated her entire life to be close to the investigation, close to where Brittany had disappeared, close to where she believed one day her daughter would be found. For 13 years, Dawn lived in South Carolina. For 13 years, she advocated. She pushed police. She gave interviews. She organized vigils. She kept Brittany's case in the public eye. And for 13 years, she waited for the phone call that would finally tell her what happened to her daughter. While all these false leads were being pursued, the real killer was living quietly in Georgetown County, South Carolina, just 30 miles from where Brittany was last seen. His name was Raymond Douglas Moody. And in April 2009, when Brittany disappeared, he was 48 years old. Moody was a registered sex offender. He'd previously been convicted of criminal sexual conduct in California. He'd served time, and when he got out, he moved to South Carolina, registered as required by law, and tried to stay off law enforcement's radar. He ran a small cabinet-making shop in Georgetown County. He lived with his longtime girlfriend, Angel Voss, in an apartment at a place called Sunset Lodge in Pawleys Island. In 2012, 3 years after Brittany disappeared, Raymond Moody was named as a person of interest in the case. Police searched his property. They questioned him. Moody denied any involvement. "I don't know anything about that girl," he told police. They had no physical evidence tying him to Brittany, no witnesses placing them together, no reason to arrest him. So Moody walked free. And for another 10 years, he kept his secret. Before I tell you how this case finally broke, how Raymond Moody's confession came about, and what he told police, I need you to do something. Share this video right now. Share it on Facebook. Share it on Twitter. Share it with anyone who's ever gone to Myrtle Beach for spring break. Share it with parents who have teenage daughters. Because this story is a warning, and it needs to be heard by as many people as possible. Share it, then come back. Because what Moody finally admitted in 2022 is absolutely chilling. On May 11th, 2022, 13 years and 16 days after Brittany Drexel disappeared, human remains were discovered in a wooded area near Georgetown County Airport, about 30 miles from Myrtle Beach. The location was remote, heavily wooded, off the beaten path. A hand-dug grave near a swampy area. Georgetown County Sheriff's deputies and FBI agents responded to the scene. They carefully excavated the remains, and they began the process of identifying them. Dental records, DNA testing. It all came back with a match. The remains were Brittany Drexel. After 13 years, she'd been found, less than 35 miles from where she'd disappeared, buried in a shallow grave the entire time. The discovery set off a chain reaction in the investigation. Because if they'd found Brittany, that meant whoever put her there might still be around. 5 days after Brittany's remains were found, police arrested Raymond Moody at his home. He was charged with murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct. At a press conference, Georgetown County Sheriff Carter Weaver announced, Brittany Drexel was kidnapped by Raymond Moody on the night of April 25, 2009. He raped her, murdered her, and buried her body the next day. Moody had confessed. After 13 years of silence, after lying to investigators in 2012, after watching Dawn Drexel hold vigils and press conferences and searches, after watching the entire nation look for Brittany, Raymond Moody finally told the truth. According to Moody's confession and arrest warrants, here's what happened on April 25, 2009. Around 9 p.m., Moody was driving his Ford Explorer on Ocean Boulevard in Myrtle Beach. He saw Brittany walking alone, heading back to her hotel. Moody pulled over. He approached her, and somehow, either by force or by deception, he got her into his vehicle. One theory is that Moody's girlfriend, Angel Voss, was with him and helped lure Brittany. Angel allegedly told Brittany they'd give her a ride back to her hotel. Trusting that a woman was involved, Brittany may have gotten in the vehicle thinking it was safe. But it wasn't safe. Once Brittany was in the vehicle, Moody didn't drive her to her hotel. He drove south, down Highway 17, away from Myrtle Beach, toward his home in Georgetown County. He took Brittany to a remote campsite near his home. And there, in that isolated location, Raymond Moody raped 17-year-old Brittany Drexel. After the assault, according to arrest warrants, Moody strangled her. Brittany fought. She struggled. But Moody was 48 years old, over 6 feet tall, and strong. Brittany was 5 feet 6 inches and maybe 115 pounds. She didn't survive. Moody killed her. And then he took her phone, the phone that had been pinging towers as he drove south, and threw it in the North Santee River. That's why the phone signal stopped near McClellanville. That's why it went dead. The next day, April 26th, Moody dug a shallow grave in a wooded area across from Georgetown County Airport. He buried Brittany's body there. He covered it with dirt and brush. And then he went back to his life, back to his cabinet shop, back to his girlfriend, back to pretending he was just a regular guy. Angel Voss was Moody's longtime girlfriend. She'd been with him for years. They lived together. She worked with him. And according to federal charges filed against her, Angel knew what Moody had done. She allegedly helped lure Brittany into the vehicle on April 25th. She knew Moody had killed Brittany. She knew where the body was buried. And for 13 years, she said nothing. When FBI agents interviewed Angel in 2022 after Moody's confession, she initially defended him. She refused to cooperate. But eventually, faced with the evidence and the severity of the charges, Angel made a deal. She pleaded guilty to lying to federal investigators and agreed to cooperate. In September 2024, Angel Voss pleaded guilty to federal charges. In February 2025, she was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for her role in covering up Brittany's murder. Moody's girlfriend had spent 13 years lying, 13 years keeping Brittany's location secret, 13 years watching Dawn Drexel search and suffer, and saying nothing. On October 19th, 2022, 6 months after his arrest, Raymond Moody appeared in Georgetown County Court for sentencing. He pleaded guilty to murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the sentencing hearing, Moody addressed the court. He was emotional. He cried. He said, "I'm at a loss for words. I have so much regret. I've realized it doesn't matter how sincere I am about how I feel about the things I've done." Some people in the courtroom thought Moody was genuinely remorseful. Others thought it was an act, that he was only sorry he got caught. Either way, it didn't matter. Brittany was gone. Nothing Moody said could bring her back. Dawn Drexel spoke at the sentencing. She'd waited 13 years for this moment, and she said, "This is truly a mother's worst nightmare. I've been mourning my beautiful daughter Brittany for the past 13 years. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter. The search for Brittany is now a pursuit of Brittany's justice." Raymond Moody was taken away in handcuffs. He'll die in prison, and Brittany's family can finally have some measure of closure. In March 2025, a South Carolina jury awarded Brittany's family $700 million in a wrongful death lawsuit filed against Raymond Moody, Angel Voss, and the Bar Harbor Resort, the hotel where Brittany was staying. The jury found that Moody's actions caused extreme emotional distress to the Drexel family. The award included $200 million in actual damages and $500 million in punitive damages. Will the family ever see that money? Probably not. Moody has no assets. But the verdict sent a message. What was done to Brittany and her family was unforgivable, and the perpetrators will be held accountable in every way possible. What went wrong? Looking back at Brittany's case, there were multiple failures, not by investigators, but by circumstances, bad luck, and one terrible decision. Brittany's decision to lie. This is the hardest thing to talk about because Brittany was the victim. But the reality is that if she hadn't lied to her mother about going to Myrtle Beach, she might still be alive. Dawn said no for good reasons. And Brittany's decision to defy her put her in a vulnerable position 800 miles from home. No adult supervision. Brittany went to Myrtle Beach with teenagers. No parents. No responsible adults. When she walked alone at night on Ocean Boulevard, there was no one there to protect her, no one to say, "Don't walk by yourself." Bad timing. Brittany happened to be walking on Ocean Boulevard at the exact moment Raymond Moody was driving by, looking for a victim. If she'd left Peter's Hotel 5 minutes earlier or later, Moody might have been gone. But timing lined up in the worst possible way. Moody was a predator. Raymond Moody was a registered sex offender living in South Carolina. The system knew he was dangerous. But how do you stop someone like him from driving to Myrtle Beach during spring break and looking for victims? You can't track them 24/7. And that's the terrifying reality. Brittany's disappearance had a lasting impact on Myrtle Beach. The city, which depends heavily on spring break tourism, suddenly had to confront the reality that their town wasn't as safe as they wanted to believe. In response to Brittany's case, Myrtle Beach installed 20 additional surveillance cameras across the city. They increased police presence during spring break. They started running safety campaigns, warning young people not to walk alone at night. But the damage to the city's reputation was done. For years, when people thought about Myrtle Beach and spring break, they thought about Brittany Drexel, the girl who never came home. After Brittany was found in 2022 and Moody was convicted, Dawn finally had the closure she'd searched for 13 years. But closure doesn't mean peace. Dawn spent 13 years of her life in limbo. She'd moved to South Carolina, away from her family and support system. She'd put her life on hold. She'd aged visibly from the stress and heartbreak. Now, she has Brittany's remains. She can visit her daughter's grave. She knows what happened. She knows Moody will die in prison. But she also knows she'll never see Brittany graduate high school, go to college, get married, have children. She'll never see the woman Brittany was supposed to become. And she knows that Brittany's last hours were filled with terror, pain, and horror. No mother should ever have to know those details about their child's death. Marissa Drexel lost her big sister when she was just a kid. She spent her teenage years and early adulthood with Brittany missing. When Marissa was asked about the case after Moody's conviction, she said the hardest part was knowing how close Brittany came to being found so much earlier. If Moody had been questioned more thoroughly in 2012, when he was first named a person of interest, if investigators had searched the wooded area near his home sooner, if Angel Voss had come forward years earlier, Brittany could have been found. She could have been laid to rest properly. The family could have had closure. But those are all what-ifs. And what-ifs don't bring anyone back. The message to parents and teenagers. If there's one lesson from Brittany's story, it's this. To parents, trust your instincts. Dawn had a premonition something bad would happen if Brittany went to Myrtle Beach. She was right. If your gut tells you something is dangerous, don't back down. Your teenager might hate you for saying no, but it could save their life. To teenagers, I know you think you're invincible. I know you think bad things happen to other people, not me. I know you want freedom and adventure and to do what your friends are doing. But the reality is this. There are predators out there. People like Raymond Moody who are actively looking for vulnerable young people to victimize. When you lie to your parents about where you're going, when you put yourself in situations without adult supervision, when you walk alone at night in unfamiliar places, you're making yourself a target. Brittany Drexel was a good kid. She wasn't doing drugs. She wasn't in a gang. She wasn't engaging in risky criminal behavior. She just wanted to go to the beach with her friends. And that one decision to lie to her mom and go to Myrtle Beach cost her life. Brittany Drexel wanted to be a fashion designer. She wanted to leave Rochester and see the world. She wanted to create things that would make people feel beautiful. She never got that chance. On April 25th, 2009, she was walking back to her hotel after visiting a friend. She was texting her boyfriend. She was probably thinking about the beach, about going home in a few days, about whether her mom would find out she'd lied about the trip. And then Raymond Moody saw her. A predator saw an opportunity. And in the span of maybe 30 seconds, Brittany's life was over. For 13 years, she lay in a shallow grave in the woods. For 13 years, her family searched. For 13 years, Raymond Moody and Angel Voss kept their secret. But in 2022, the truth finally came out. Brittany was found. Justice was served. Moody will die in prison. Angel Voss is serving 18 years. The case is closed, but Brittany is still gone. Here's what I need from everyone who's watched this video. 1. Subscribe to Untold Cold Cases Files if you haven't already. Hit that button. Ring the bell. We tell stories that matter. Cases that need to be remembered. Families that deserve justice. Your subscription matters. 2. Like this video if you found it impactful, if you learned something, if you think others should hear Brittany's story. That like helps YouTube show this to more people. 3. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you knew about Brittany's case. Tell me if you've ever been to Myrtle Beach for spring break. Tell me if this story has changed how you think about safety. Your comments matter. 4. Share this video everywhere. This is the most important action you can take. Share it with parents. Share it with teenagers. Share it in school groups. Share it with anyone who needs to understand that bad things can happen to good people, and that one decision can change everything. Brittany's story should be shown in high schools across America. It should be required viewing for every teenager planning a spring break trip. Because this isn't about scaring young people. It's about educating them. The world has predators like Raymond Moody in it. That's the reality. And being aware, being careful, and listening to your parents' warnings can literally save your life. Brittany Marie Drexel, born October 7th, 1991, died April 25th, 2009, at age 17. Loved by her family, remembered by a nation. Gone too soon because of one man's evil. Rest in peace, Brittany. Your story will not be forgotten. This has been Untold Cold Cases Files. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for helping us honor Brittany's memory. And to Dawn Drexel, your strength over these 13 years is remarkable. Your fight for your daughter inspired thousands of people. Brittany is finally home. She's finally at peace. I'll see you in the next one.